and welcome to In the Cool of the Day, and today's segment of People Connecting People. I'm your host, Ruth Pegeron. I have a special show for you today. My guest navigates and supports people going through significant change and loss as smoothly and humanely as possible. She has experienced several tragic losses herself within her own family and her own cancer journey. So she is acquainted with how grief shows up in different ways and at different times. She works one-on-one with individuals, private groups, and businesses as a change and loss certified coach and consultant. She is also certified by the Grief Recovery Institute and the Grief Recovery Method. She has a very compelling story to share, so please welcome Maureen Desmond, founder and CEO of Navigating Change and Loss. So thank you so much for being here, Maureen. Tell me about Maureen.
Thank you.
Yes,
I'm so glad
yes.
to be here with you, Ruth.
You're
Thanks.
welcome.
Yes, so a little about me. I am from the Maryland, Virginia, Washington, D.C. area, the DMV. I've
Wow.
lived here all of my life. Born in D.C., raised in Maryland, and came over to the Virginia side when I finished up school.
You're truly DMV.
I am.
You don't meet a lot of Washingtonians, and I mean, you got it now.
Yes,
so you can say that.
exactly.
Not many can say that. Oh, that's pretty cool. Yes.
I know, it is cool. I love this area. It's got a little of everything, right?
It does.
And I am so fortunate enough to have a daughter. I have one child. She is 32 years old now,
wow.
married. We just had a beautiful wedding last summer.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes,
So
yes.
she's a huge gift and just a special person. So I have to acknowledge her.
Yeah.
And then I have grand dogs right now.
Right now, I was going to ask,
just
so
grand
babies
dogs.
will come soon, right?
Yeah. It's in the works.
Yes, absolutely.
So, and really I've been, some of my hobbies are, I've always been a big runner and walker. And
Nice.
now walking more so, but it's always been something that I've done all my life since I was in middle school when I ran track and cross country, and I kind of continued that. And then I have two brothers and a sister.
Okay.
Pretty much two are local, and then one is in South Carolina. So we have a great big family with nieces and nephews and such too. So I'm really close to them as well.
That's awesome, and
Yeah.
that's important.
Yeah.
And I know it's important for you to have those important relationships and connections in the work that you do.
Absolutely.
Supporting people through change and loss. It's not work sometimes that we sign up for.
Yeah.
It's not work that, when you're in college, you're like, you know what, I want to help people with loss, or you just don't do it that way.
Yeah.
So kind of tell me what led you to this work.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, we had a huge loss when we lost my sister at the age of 18 in a car accident.
Wow.
And
that is huge.
yeah, really just unexpected, obviously. And my whole family was just devastated. And picking up the pieces after that was grueling, was challenging. And our family was my parents had gotten separated a couple of years before this. And so there was a lot of detachment already. And so to kind of layer that in really did some work on us. So I was in college at the time and really had no resources. We definitely were a close-knit family where we could go and talk to each other about it and cry together and things like that. But we were all sort of as siblings at different ages, at different stages of our lives. And then my parents were going through this separation that became a divorce.
Right.
And so there was just a lot of, all the pieces,
A lot of loss.
all the pieces. So
and change.
And a lot of change.
Yeah.
So and then being at that age that I was, it became complicated because I was around college students and parties and people having a good old time and what you're supposed to do in college.
Right.
And I was not there.
Right.
And so I couldn't find support. But I quickly realized that, you know what? I know I have grandparents, I have parents, I have my siblings, but I need I need more support than that. So I started looking for therapists to help me. And this is in the mid 80s, so there wasn't a lot. People didn't really talk about therapy then, and going to a therapist. And I even felt sort of like, oh, should I do this? You know, I don't want anybody to know.
Right.
But
or
you
sometimes
know,
people think you're cuckoo.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
are you crazy? You can't handle things?
Right.
Right.
Right. So it took a little time to find that person that I could really relate to and get some support from. And she really changed my life because she allowed me to have the feelings I had. I sometimes would go in and just cry. And she wouldn't say, oh, you need to hurry up and get over this, those kinds of things. And she was great. And she also was the person that said, what did you do with your sister that you can kind of continue on, obviously, without her? And so my sister and I used to write letters to each other growing up. We'd put letters under each other's bedroom doors. And even as we got older, if we were at like a summer job, we'd write letters to each other. So she said, why don't you just journal some letters? So I've got probably 3 thick journals of letter writing that I did during that time.
Oh, wonderful.
So because of all of that, I knew that I was going to have this woven into my life forever, experiencing what I did. And I always thought in the back of my head, I've got to do this work. I've got to do this work. But I didn't know how.
Right. And you needed just a little bit of help to do it. And fast forward, who would have thought you're doing really the work?
I know.
You know, to take you there.
Yeah.
So when you were, what were you doing before you found this company, Navigating Change and Loss?
Yeah.
What was your career like? What were you doing?
Well, you're not going to believe it because it's so drastically different than what I'm doing now. But I kind of fell into sales.
Okay.
And so someone told me you'd be really good at sales. And I thought out of 50 careers, that would probably be the 49th or 50th that I would choose. But guess what? I went for it. And I started out selling copiers and fax machines.
Oh, wow.
To a certain zip code in Washington, D.C. So this was called knocking on doors, going into buildings and knocking on doors and saying,
no internet at the time. That's right. Yes.
And fax machines weren't even a thing then. So I had to go in and kind of explain like how it worked. Right. Yeah. And now, like, we've already gone through fax machines, and now it's like they're kind of obsolete now.
Yes.
So
they are.
Just so interesting.
Fax from the phone now. Yes. So you've seen that whole generation with faxes. Okay, so you did that for how long?
So I cut my teeth in that for about a year and a half, and I don't think I was really good at it, but I made a couple of sales. But with that experience, I saw an opportunity to interview for a job at USA Today, Gannett, USA Today, the newspaper, and go into advertising sales. So I got the interview, and one of the first things that she said was, if you can sell faxes and copiers, you can sell advertising. And so I was in, and for the next 25 years, that was my career.
Wow.
Yeah.
For USA Gannett.
Yeah.
Okay. So how did you get into this then? What led you from that to this?
So for you at USA Today and Gannett, I did a lot of different sales jobs. I went in classified advertising, and then into being a sales rep and traveling, and then became a sales manager, and was really in sales management on up for the next 18 years after that. So I was in a lot of positions, but it was always in the sales arena. And what I found was, especially being a manager for 18 years, I had a lot of people that worked for me, and I had a lot of teams of people, and everyone has a situation or 2 or 3 in their lives where they're losing someone, or they're going through a significant life event. And so I was that empathetic manager. I had been through it. And, I not only lost my sister, but I lost my father young in my 20s as well. He dropped dead of a heart attack. I'm a cancer survivor. I've been through those journeys of loss. And so for each person, I was that empathetic person. And I listened to them. I had all the skill sets to help them. And I would go to HR sometimes and say, we need to do something different for this person. We need to allow this, we need to allow that. And I was lucky enough to work for a company that was very supportive of that.
Oh, wow.
And so that was sort of my training into what I'm currently doing now. Being a manager, I went into, I got my coaching certification also. So I would have that as a backdrop one day when I went into my own business.
Well, that is interesting. So I'm sure you had a great workforce as a result of that. Did you find that people were more loyal to you, less turnover? Did those kind of things result?
All of those things, spot on. People would come back from, sometimes they would take family leave because they had a lot of things to do after their parent passed or and such. And so I would, okay, you go, you do what you need to do. You've got your job here when you come back, things like that. And so those people were so loyal. Some people just needed some space. Some people just needed to work from home, which was not a thing then, a couple days a week for the first few months out. Sometimes it was a spouse that had passed. They had children. They couldn't just come back to work. They had to have extra care. So I was always that resource to kind of help them through that time too. And then it kind of trickled out across the company where I was sort of training other managers and such through those times.
How to help people with this kind of change, because it's life altering in a lot of ways. I always say when people lose, there's layers of losses. So you might physically lose a person. However, that person could be the gardener. They could have been the babysitter. They could have been the taxi driver. They could have been the breadwinner. They could have been the coach. They could have been the chef. So it's layers to a loss. And if you had a workplace and if you were helping people with that, I think I know the answer to this, but I want to hear it. Now, I asked you, was it, a better workplace? But I'm sure productivity, when the people came back and when they, were recovering from it, were they more productive? Were they more engaged? As far as on a whole? Yeah,
so I have one great example of that, many, but this one stands out. One of the gals took some family leave, and when she came back, she came right to my office and stood there, and I looked up, and she got emotional, and she came over to me, and she gave me the biggest hug, and she said, just those 90 days of being able to help the rest of my family meant so much to me. And I don't even know what to say to you, that you've just really done so much for all of us, not just me. So that was such a beautiful thing. And while she was on leave, ironically, she met a guy who is now her husband, and they have 3 children. And, with social media today, she still to this day reaches out and thanks me over and over.
All right, Maureen, well, it's time for a short break. We'll be right back, and we'll return after these messages.
Hi, I'm Josh Temple. You might have seen me on TV where I help folks turn their houses into dream homes. But forget construction. Parenting is the toughest job there is. So when you need help or advice, turn to the parenting experts at Boys Town.
All right, well, welcome back. You are watching In the Cool of the Day, in today's segment of People Connecting People, with my special guest, Maureen Desmond, the founder and CEO of Navigating Change and Loss. So prior to the break, we were talking about your experience at Gannett, USA Today, and how that kind of was your foundation for just how people navigate through loss as a manager. You had a sales team and you had to support them. And as they had so much loss, you just found yourself naturally trying to help them. And you didn't do it for the benefits of it, which was lower turnover, good retention, engaged workforce, sales results, all of those things that happen in a workplace when you have a group of employees that are healthy and happy. You were helping them just out of empathy and just a life event that took place that you noticed was having a negative result in someone's behavior or their emotions, and they just need a little help.
Yeah.
And you gathered around an HR team to kind of help you with that. And you got creative, it sounds like, too, where you understood quickly that, you know, if I lost a father and he lost a father, my needs was going to be different than his needs. And you rallied to get that support to make it look different. And it sounds like that culture kind of got throughout the company. So I get it. So now I have a magical question now. How, when you started your own business, what support groups did you tend to do, and like how did that start?
Yeah, great question. Thank you for that. So beginning my business, you know, I went through my career and I came to a point where I really knew that there was a need to do more of what I had done at these other companies across my career, and try to put something out there to the world on my own. And so lucky me, I started my business in early 2020.
Yes.
So
yes.
It was one of those years where, wow, everybody,
Right.
you know, went through a lot. So my whole intention was, you know, I had gotten my certification in coaching and helping people through significant life events. I was kind of doing that all of my career in a sense, organically. And then I really started doing it kind of the years leading up to starting my business. So once I did that, I thought, I'm going to start with individuals. You know, I'm just going to put myself out there, had a website, and find those folks that have had loss or significant life events. And they could be anything from a divorce, change in health, financial crisis, and loss, death, things like that. And it's wonderful. I love working with people, whether it's one-to-one, whether it's groups, and everything in between. So that's kind of really how I stepped in during that first 2020 to 2021. I was doing a lot of that. And then I was doing those groups for those specific categories as well. And what I found was that all of these people that I was coaching, they were professionals. And so they started saying to me, we need you at our office. We need you for our HR team. We need you for our management teams. Yes. And so organically, they would go back to their company and say, I've been seeing this coach and she's helped me so much. And I know that we're going through a lot of change with, you know, some of it was the pandemic and some of it was other people were having loss because of that. And so organically, I was just sort of tiptoeing into these companies and doing similar things, you know, doing some of the individual private coaching for their employees, doing some group sessions where we would just talk about feelings and things like that, wellness types of initiatives, and also sensitive communication. Sometimes they didn't know how to share what to say in an email to staff when there was an employee that had passed, or when an employee had had a lot of loss. So I started to write those emails and do those sessions to help them get this communication out there. So a lot of this what I do kind of happened organically.
Okay.
Yeah.
It sounds like it. I was going to say, how did you get into the corporate? But it makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, you touch one and they're like, wow, this helped me so much. And it can help my company because of that.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So now that's really I guess your focus is kind of everywhere, or is your focus just to some groups, or is it corporations? Like where do you focus now?
Yeah, it really has been a mix.
Okay.
But the corporate side, I'm getting a lot of referrals. So once I work with a company, they're usually referring me, or someone within the company is. So there's that. And then I still, again, if I can help one person or 10,000, right? It's one
healthy.
of those things. And so I'll take on corporate business. I'll take on my one-to-ones, which I love. I love my group sessions as well. So wherever I see the need and I have the time, and I'm starting to really expand now, I want to be able to offer all of those things. So, and that will hopefully be coming soon.
Okay, that's good. So that leads me to my next question. Do you find yourself, or people, it's not even you, but do you find that people are calling you more for a loss when it relates to a death, or is it more divorce, new city, job loss? Like, it's so many losses that we experience that we don't even realize how much. I always, when I started doing a little grief work, and I was studying, I'm like, wow, when you look at loss, I'm like, the only loss that people seem to appreciate is losing weight. Everything else, has some complexities to it in the beginning. You see, light at the end, but it has some complexity sometimes.
Oh, that's true.
So, yeah, so you find that? Is it other losses, or is it just death focused?
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's been a lot of death loss.
Okay.
However, I do get a lot of the job and career change and layoff kinds of situations. People who have been within a company for 20 some years, which is not as common now, but there are still others that are in that place, and they're getting laid off, and they really don't have a plan. They're sort of lost along the way.
Yeah.
What I find also is sometimes it is somebody that I'm working through a health issue, or just I don't know what I want to do with the rest of my life. And what I find is they come in, and then what they're unpacking is all of the grief loss that they've had in the past that they've never really worked with. And so that becomes, we move it all the way up here, based on what their needs are, what they want to do, and it begins the grief process at a later stage, which sometimes can be 25 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago. So it's sort of one of those things where you never know what you're going to get as a coach working with people, but you always know where and how to help them.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you're observing pretty favorable results.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. It is quite amazing. I always say it's so important to acknowledge people that are going through anything tough. And the acknowledgement and validation of what's happening to them is really one of the biggest things that helps boost their grieving process, or just that they feel heard and that they can move forward more quickly. And it's amazing, through all the work that I've done, so many people share that, and they'll say, not too many people ever acknowledge what I'm going through. And especially if I'm still grieving a year or two later, they'll make comments like, "You're not over that yet?" And so it's sort of, very common. So I find that just those little things. I also say, go to the funeral. If you have a colleague that lost a parent, you don't have to have known the parent. You're supporting the colleague, you're supporting the family. And I can't tell you how many times through my losses, when I was standing up doing a eulogy or talking about my sister or my father or my mother, and looking out at all the seats that are filled, and it just fills you up with gratitude of what they meant to other people too, because a lot of times in life we don't get to hear those stories until they're gone. And so I always say, show up for the funeral. It's not something that is the first, second, or third thing on the list of that people want to do, but it's so important. It
really is. And that you just said something. When you do look up and you see all those people, it means a lot. It means a lot. But talking about grief and your vulnerabilities and just losses and how you feel, like that 20-year, 35-year employee, a divorce that's shocking, unexpected. It's a lot of fear in that. Do you find that you help people talk about through the fear? It's kind of hard sometimes to say, I'm afraid. It really is. And how do you help with that?
A lot of it is just expressing it, showing up, they show up, I show up.
Mm-hmm.
And so much of what a coach does, especially when it comes to the significant loss and change, is listening.
Yes.
Having really good listening skills.
Mm-hmm.
I say listen like a heart with ears. I love that expression because that is really how I listen. And that not only came from all of the sales side of things.
You're right,
but,
in sales, you have to listen.
Yeah, but the other side is now I'm a really good listener to those who are going through those things. And you hear those words, they'll express, I'm fearful of, or will I ever be happy again? Will I ever have a hearty laugh? Again. And they start seeing it and seeing that they will laugh again, just through the work, just by acknowledgement, just by validating them, just by letting them express their sorrow, whether it's in the past or current. And then there's always these signs that they're moving forward.
Yes.
And so as soon as I see those little things, I'll nudge them a little bit. One spouse lost her husband, and she said, we had planned a trip to Ireland and Scotland. I've put it on the back burner, and now I want to do it.
Right.
And so I'm like, let's plan it.
Let's do it.
Let's plan it together. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Love the stories. Well, before we go, we have a few seconds left here. I would like to ask you to give us 1 or 2 tips for our listeners today.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's
1
great.
or 2 things.
That's great.
Yes.
Wow. I could tell them a lot, but let me think about this. So I definitely think acknowledging and validating people who are going through anything, even if it seems like it might be a little awkward for them, to say what you would want to hear. Kind of put it back to that. And just know that we are all in this together. And again, go to the funeral, support them, don't ignore them, and do what you would want somebody to do for you.
Thank you, Maureen. That was awesome.
You bet.
Well, it's that time again. If you have any questions about today's segment, please see the information scrolling below. You have been watching In the Cool of the Day and today's segment of People Connecting People. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.